It is welcome along to the Matchbook NFL podcast. Sorry, I've been thinking about doing that all day. I just can't get that out of my head. It's NFL playoffs time. I hope you forgive me for the bit of tunes at the start of this podcast, but I'm your host, Daniel. Delighted to welcome Drew, Sam, Judah. As always, Drew, you're the most experienced man on the team. You had a great week yourself. Sorry, firstly, we went 3-0 on best bets, but we'll get into that. But your takeaways from last week. I mean, I know there were a few blowouts, but I don't know if I've enjoyed a weekend of football as much for a very, very long time, I have to say.
Oh, yeah, without question. The games were just in general more entertaining than our regular season NFL games were by a margin. And I kind of feel bad for people who are like spamming overs this weekend because they probably should have gone 5-1. I mean, if maybe you could make a case that the over should have had a better shot in the KC game and 6-0 was live. But no, those were super entertaining games, really impressive performances from some young quarterbacks, which is like a huge relief. Like, boy, oh boy, like the fact that we have live young arms in the NFL is a breath of fresh air. The results in general were incredible. The best moment of the weekend for me, for sure, was watching the Packers-Cowboys I was heavily staked Packers in that one by the time we got to the kickoff, and seeing them score 4 straight touchdowns was just like increasing excitement and emotion in my household. So that was a ton of fun. And honestly, I'm pretty excited for all 4 of these games in terms of specific matchups that I think are important and going to be fun to watch. And I think I still feel like the landscape is pretty flat. Any of these 8 teams realistically has a chance.
Yeah, well, even if the Super Bowl, like 38.0 is the biggest price, we'll get to that in a second with Sam. I know he wants to talk briefly on the Super Bowl market. Judah, it felt a big weekend for the NFL because we've been talking through it throughout the season. There has been some good weeks, but in general, the football hasn't lived up to expectations. Look, the backup quarterbacks has been well documented, but the young quarterbacks stood up. Not just young quarterbacks, young wide receivers. It was just a really, really good weekend of the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. And even just like underdogs actually having a shot and winning games. I mean, like the Packers being a 7-point dog and just blowing the doors off the Cowboys. I think it's good for the league that kind of anything can happen, especially with these young guys. It was a great product, I thought, and getting 3 straight days of 6 hours of football is truly a blessing.
Yeah, we are blessed, Judah. Everyone follow at Throw the Damn Ball. A very positive tweeter throughout. He either tweets his great graphs that he has, which really sort of outline different areas of the game, but also just a very positive. We need to be grateful. Enjoy these games. 7 games left of the NFL season, which is a bit depressing, Sam. Let's talk about the Super Bowl market and the latest outright prices. Just for a bit of fun here, we want to talk about them on the Matchup Betting Exchange. Good, fun market to trade in or out depending on your position so far. Niners 286 favorites. Seems short to me. Ravens 395, Bills 7-8, Lions shorter than the Chiefs at 10.0, Chiefs 10.5, Packers 27, Texans 36, and the Bucs 38. Sam.
Yeah, and I think I've said this for it feels like half a season, if not longer. But I think the Niners are the team to beat here. That hasn't changed. But when I'm thinking about value, the one that really stands out here is the Packers, because I think if they do beat the Niners this week, you are getting a huge price that will be absolutely smashed in. And I think they're better than the other teams left in that conference. So for me, just as a value play, I think that's potentially the way to go. If you're really set on having an outright bet, go for the Packers this week. If they do win, then that's going to shorten. And then you can weigh up potentially, do you then lay that bet or let it ride? So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the outright markets right now.
And Sam, yeah, props to you. Your long shot in our opening podcast when the 4 of us first time ever working together was around 90.0 on the Green Bay Packers and the Matchup Betting Exchange. And what happened throughout the season that you came in for them, you deserted them, you try to come back in, you deserted them, and now the train's leaving the station, you're trying to call it back to just get on them one last time.
Yeah, that's it. I was so high on Jordan Love coming into the season. I drafted him everywhere. I think I tweeted that he was going to win the MVP. And then started the season, I was thinking like, yes, I'm a player for him. And then he had a really bad run of games. I kind of got off the train, and then he's just been playing so well since week 11 in particular. absolutely lights out. And I can't really claim any credit for it, given how much I tried to abandon him. But it is just great to see him play so well.
You weren't wrong early doors. You were just early. That was the problem, Sam. But no, fair play. Look, Jordan Love's been an incredible quarterback to watch. Drew, you're loving. I can see you loving that chat there. CJ Stroud, so many young quarterbacks. Let's get into the games here before we get going. Do check out the Matchbook Betting Exchange, particularly close to those kickoffs. You'll invariably get the best price and highly competitive markets at betting at around an over-round of 100% on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. So check out all our NFL markets. And do hit that like button on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on the podcast, wherever you're listening, take 2 seconds to hit that 5-star review. That'd be much appreciated from the guys. The guys went 3-0 on best bets. Great weekend. Let's see, can we keep it going for 4 games here? It's Texans Ravens, Packers Niners, Bucs at the Lions, and then the big one, Chiefs at the Bills. We'll start with the Saturday game, which is 9:30 p.m. in the UK and Ireland. Texans at the Ravens. Texans 4.6 on the money line. I know that'll tempt a few people. The Ravens 125. The handicap sees Texans now getting an 8.5 start. That was 9 earlier on. The total here is set at 43.5, and that's shaded towards the over at 192. So look, Judah, I'll start with you on this because look, CJ Stroud really stood up. It was an incredible performance from a rookie. There's a lot of debate on the 1 seed over the last few years and the advantage it has. How do you go about even pricing a market like this before you can begin betting?
Yeah, it's a very tough one to price, especially kind of the Texans have been dealing with a lot of injuries over the later part of the season going into the playoffs. They seem to be relatively healthy, I think, going into this game, which is a little bit unusual given the circumstance. I think the markets have this one pretty much priced right in terms of a median, right? Like they're thinking about the kind of what's most likely to happen 50% of the time. But I think there's a lot of room kind of on the tails for this game to play out in any such way. And like, would it at all be shocking if kind of CJ Stroud outduels Lamar Jackson and the Texans win? No, I don't think so. I think that's a legitimate possibility. But as for kind of the bets that I'm interested in, I like the over here. There's a little bit of weather, which has pushed this total down a bit. It's not at the level of wind where I'm comfortable actually fading kind of these passing attacks. And the thesis here is that the Ravens have become a lot more pass heavy, especially after Mitchell went down. And this is a Texans run defense, which has been terrific over the second half of the season, and a pass defense, which has really, really struggled. We know the Ravens offense is going to score. And I think on the flip side, if you look at CJ Stroud, I think he's becoming one of the more matchup agnostic quarterbacks, not only because he's done a lot better of a job scrambling, which as I've written about the stuff in the past, kind of helps to mitigate the defensive advantage. If you can extend plays, it allows your receivers to get open. Yes, he does take some sacks, but it also kind of allows you to buy time, which is important to defeat good defenses. And at the end of the day, he is going to throw the ball deep, and there's only so much a defense can do if you've got a quarterback who's buying time and is always looking downfield and can throw accurately to his receivers, especially when you talk about the scheme. I mean, they've had wide open guys against. This isn't a Browns defense, which was a kind of pushover. This was the number 1 defense in the NFL that CJ Stroud just went all over. All this is to say, I think both offenses are quite good. I don't think kind of the matchup angle for the Ravens defense overwhelming the Texans is going to stand. I think this Ravens offense can certainly put up 35 points alone, which is why I'm not so interested in the Texans, though I do lean there. I just think this is an overspot, especially if the market's going to be selling a little bit for weather, where I don't think that's particularly warranted.
Okay, over 43.5, the selection for Judah. Drew, it's amazing what happens when the Texans coaching staff allow their rookie, one of their best rookie quarterbacks ever, to throw the ball. So would you give credit to them for learning from, say, week 18, or would you say, why weren't we doing this all the time?
Yeah, I think it's important if we're going to be critical for, of the staff for shooting themselves in the foot in a must-win game against Indianapolis. We should be lauding them for the self-evaluation and improvement in decision-making with the way they handled the game against the Browns. Yeah, I mean, Bobby Slowick in general, like, it's important to recognize and acknowledge that his scheme and just what he's drawing up from a route tree, what his concepts are all kind of, number one, fit really well with the talent he has. And number two, are kind of at the cutting edge of what's happening right now in pro football, which is really helping elevate the offense. Second after, CJ Stroud just in general playing like a god. But the points Judah's making, I think, are all fair, and I think it supports backing the Texans at this price point. Because honestly, the The Ravens were a regular season machine, particularly at the end of the season where they took on good teams. Well, we'll say an elite team in the Niners and a good team question mark in the Dolphins, and just completely took care of business. Now, I will point out both of those teams had some issues with health and just in general ability to pass protect, which made the Ravens opportunities to generate pressure, higher likelihood. Now, those were both Shanahan tree schemes. And so you can say, well, they handled those, if they handled those two offenses well, then Bobby Slowick is the next in line. It's going to be same old, same old. But I would point out that just in general, the offensive line that Houston is bringing into this contest is performing very well right now. And yes, they're going to be on the road. Yes, it'll be a hostile environment. Communication, cracks could show, and I'm aware of that. But if that unit holds up against the pass rush for the Ravens, and then this becomes an opportunity for Nico Collins, who's performing at an absolute out of this world level right now, to kind of knife these guys in the 11 to 25 yard range down the field. That's going to, I think, support the Texans being able to, kind of hit some big plays in this contest. Marlon Humphrey is dealing with injuries. We know Kyle Hamilton got hurt at the end of the season and is playing sub 100%. And really, like the second layer of the Ravens defense with Patrick Queen and particularly Roquan Smith is really their strength. And I think in general, Bobby Slowick's scheme kind of avoids those players. Like, it definitely does not depend on being able to beat those guys one-on-one for long-term success. So I think ultimately there is scope here for the Texans offense to be successful, to put points, put a little bit of pressure on the Ravens. And that this is kind of where I go a little bit off the rails here, which is to say the Ravens have been a regular season monster for plenty of seasons in our betting lifetime. And they have been a postseason joke for plenty of seasons in our betting
Andrew,
lifetime.
does that transfer to this season if it's past teams? Yeah, there's a little bit of that, do you think? Yeah.
It comes down to the quarterback. And there's did you guys see Dak Prescott last weekend? Did it feel like he was playing with no pressure on his shoulders?
He threw for 400 yards, Drew. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's a great point. No, I mean, like, just in general, like the quarterbacks that have not had success in a playoff setting, like, there is still a huge amount of pressure on these guys. And the guy of these 8 who is at the top of the list, who has had the least amount of success at the playoff level, amazingly, is Lamar Jackson. And if he comes out and is as good as he was when he, finished the season, which, to be honest, he was playing as good as any quarterback in the final quarter of the season. But over the balance of this year, was he 8th, 10th? I mean, he's the MVP, and rightfully so. But at the same time, like, he definitely is not as game breaking as some of the other quarterbacks that are in this final 8. And so I think there's definitely a chance here that the pressure combined with just the general kind of market sentiment on who Lamar Jackson is right now and how dynamic he's going to be could be a factor for the Ravens offense being as successful as they were during the regular season. I do see you have a pretty outstanding pass protection right now from the Ravens. In general, everybody's healthy. Kevin Zeitler, I guess, is worth keeping an eye on, but he's probably the least important of the 5 guys on that O-line. And it is also very key, I think, to watch for news that Mark Andrews is going to be activated for this game. I don't have inside information that he will, but if he does, the market may react to that and push this up a smidge in favor of the Ravens. So from a market entry standpoint, if you want Texans, I think you could probably be patient. And then the Texans defense is not very good. Like, I don't know that you need to rewatch that Browns game, particularly the first half of that Browns game, to come to that conclusion. But if they're not generating pressure, if you can target anywhere on the field that Derek Stingley Jr. is not covering, you can find success against this team, particularly up the spine. So I'm sure that Todd Monken has his sights set on that, and I'm sure that there's going to be some pretty kind of effective play calling that targets that part of the field. So definitely possible that the Ravens are able to outscore the Texans here and that this is more of a shootout type of game than the market expects. But for me, in a game where this is going to come down to kind of ultimately how effective is your quarterback under pressure? How effective is he in hey, drive the field and score a point, score points to either take the lead or answer a score Honestly, I kind of feel more confident in CJ Stroud right now, given what we've seen from him now in the 2 playoff settings that we have had from this regular season, combined with how well he played against Georgia last year in the college playoff. Like, guy's got it. Like, he's cool as a cucumber under the most pressure you can put on a human quarterback. So if Lamar Jackson answers, that'll be phenomenal. That'd be fantastic. One of my favorite players, if not my favorite player, in the league, just from an entertainment standpoint, watching him play. But at the same time, I kind of need to see him do it emphatically in a playoff setting to believe that this is a team that you should be laying 8.5, 9 points with. So for me, it's Texans in the points. And from a market entry standpoint, I think you need to kind of be a little patient because we could get some Mark Andrew news that pushes this a little higher.
Okay. The Texans +9, incidentally, I know we covered the 8.5 line, is 194. There's the practice report today in the YouTube comments. Sam, 2 things. The Ravens in the 1 seed, they always with the 1 seed try to give them as much advantage as possible. I think the biggest advantage obviously is next week's game if they do win to have home advantage in the conference final, but they have both these games Saturday to make it a little bit closer to last week. But as Drew touched on with Lamar Jackson, he probably still has questions to answer playing in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Lamar Jackson question is a really fascinating one coming into this. He's, as Drew said, rightfully the MVP this season, but I think in comparison with other recent seasons, it's probably a bit of a down year in terms of what it takes to be the MVP, I would argue. And then his playoff record is well, frankly, very poor considering the player that he is. 1-3 since he became a starter, and 2 of those defeats, the Ravens actually went in as favourites. So he has been, pretty poor. There's been sort of accusations of being a bottle job. I think they've averaged 13 points per game in those 4 games, and that is a concern. I think there's probably not as much in that as some people would put in terms of emphasis, but I am still quite concerned about it. And on the other hand, I think CJ Stroud, sort of running out of superlatives, the guy just, as Drew said, cool as a cucumber. His mentality is just top tier. He's just so resilient. He's played through injuries. He's played through half his receiver core being out. He's played when the team are down, and he just leads them forward. I'm just so impressed with him sort of week after week. And as Judah said, he feels almost defense proof now. It doesn't matter what you throw at him, how good that defense is, what their scheme is. He is more than capable of excelling against it. And kind of with my bet for this one, I think, on paper, the Ravens should win. Should they be 9-point favorites? That's where I don't agree. And kind of really talk about the value here. I still think CJ Stroud is potentially being not valued enough by the market. And there's a level of disrespect there. There certainly was against the Browns. And that proved to be the case. And I just really think he's a guy that can elevate this team here. The O-line was fantastic. Laramie Tunsil was brilliant. It looked for a bit like he might be out of that game. Came back in, was fantastic. Will Anderson on the defensive front, pretty good. And there's kind of hope there for with him. And I think ultimately this is a QB that can really kind of elevate the Texans. And I think there's a relatively good chance they could win this actually, which we'll talk about in a bit, I'm sure. But I certainly think they're going to cover. 9 points is a really big number, and I don't really have true trust that the Ravens are going to show up here.
Okay, so Texans +9 at 194 for Drew and Sam. Judah's playing the over. Judah, quick line on maybe Lamar in the playoffs, as the guys touched on there. You probably didn't get a chance to cover that in full.
Yeah, I think to make a fair point that these are human beings and pressure exists, but I also recognize small sample sizes and weird game scripts that can kind of would it be at all surprising for Lamar Jackson to just continue his regular season play? No. That I'm kind of fading any of the playoff
It's
stuff.
a small sample size for a reason. There's more sample if he's winning, Judah.
It could be a bit. It would be a big, be a big sample now if he was winning them all. Yeah, it would be about 16, wouldn't it, Drewish? So yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, I don't think that's the key to unlocking this handicap at all. Like the fair price between these teams is somewhere in the 6.5, 7 range. You want to give the Ravens a bump because of the bye, go for it. But no, I think nine is just it's a little too much confidence in a team that does have some flaws. We just haven't seen the Ravens play a stinker in a long time, so people forget that this is a team that is good, not elite.
Yeah. Okay, we will lock that in. Texans +9 for the two lads. Judah with the overplay there. Packers at 49ers. This is a Saturday night football in the playoffs. Packers are 5.0 on the money line. The Niners at 123. The handicap currently, as we have it on matchbook.com, is 9.5. Did open at a 10. The total for this game is 50.5. But that is shaded towards the under at 193. So yes, Sam, take it away on this one. You're Green Bay Packers. You're back on board on the train now. The 49ers, are we trying to get them beat? They've had some, they haven't been like flawless throughout the season. And again, it's similar to Ravens in the sense that they have the week off, they've got the bye, it's on Saturday. What's your sort of thought process looking at a bet here?
So again, gun to my head, I think the Niners win. But in terms of value, the Packers +9.5 just leaps off the page. Jordan Love was brilliant against the Cowboys. And I've mentioned earlier, since week 11, he's been absolutely lights out, 21 touchdowns, 1 interception. He is in the upper echelons of quarterbacks in terms of present form, not necessarily long-term form, but he's playing so well. And I think what really helped him against the Cowboys was the offensive line that gave him all the time in the world against a good Cowboys defensive front, as we know. So I think that's going to be something that the 49ers are really going to have to break down. And it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, they got Chase Young before the trade deadline. How good he's going to be here. I'm really just so excited to see this one. The two head coaches, they know each other very well. They've been on the same coaching staff for 2 different teams, I believe. And ultimately, you look at 2 teams that can really put up points. 49ers obviously 3rd in the NFL regular season in terms of points per game, behind Dolphins and Cowboys, who are both watching from home this weekend, along with us. 4th in passing yards behind the Dolphins, Lions, and Cowboys. 3rd in rushing yards behind the Ravens and Bears. Like, this is just such a powerful offense, and I think we will see the Niners take a lead. But I just think the Packers, they're a team that they can play from behind. I'm more than happy with them playing from behind. I think they've got in Jordan Love a guy who has the arm and the ability to kind of get the team back in this. And although I think the Niners do probably win, I think we're going to see the Packers hopefully backdoor us here and get us to cover. A lot of it depends, I think, ultimately on whether we see any improvement at all from the Packers defense in terms of stopping the run. They were very, very good against the Cowboys, but across the whole season as a collective, they were pretty poor, but limited Tony Pollard to just 56 yards, which was pretty impressive. But at the same time, Dak managed 45. So you kind of got to balance up, exactly how those plays broke down and allowed Dak to pick up that yardage. And will Christian McCaffrey be able to kind of really, really put his stamp on this game and dominate for the 49ers? But yeah, Packers 9.5. That's where I'm going.
Okay, Packers 9.5, around even money currently on Matchbook Betting Exchange. The money line, Judah, is 5.0. This is a young team, so when you're looking for a bet, do you want to maybe play the bit of inconsistency a little bit and maybe just go for the money line versus the points, or how are you sort of thinking in terms of a bet here?
Yeah, that's kind of exactly how I'm doing it. I think this is quite an interesting case because actually kind of similar to the Texans in that usually when you have a 10-point spread, right? Think about like, I don't know, Broncos versus the Niners. It means something different.
Steelers Bills, maybe?
Steelers Bills, right? Exactly. Yeah. The chances of the Steelers winning feels a lot smaller than the chances of kind of the Packers here. Why? There's a very clear case for how the Packers win this game, and that's if Jordan Love plays like he has the past couple of weeks, and he might be the best quarterback. He certainly would be the best quarterback in this game, and he could be a top 5 quarterback, and we'll look back on this game and be like, hey, remember when you're watching Jordan Love's emergence? That's clearly in the cards here. I also, what makes this game so interesting is I think how game script dependent this is. Number one, we constantly talk about the Niners being a great team that can front run you if they build a lead, and that's certainly in the cards. But if you get a couple of weird variance plays, I think there's a particular matchup which makes this game very, very intriguing, and that is that the Niners offensive line has really struggled this year, and Kyle Shanahan's done a great job kind of scheming away from that. The Packers defense has been terrible with the exception of their ability to generate pressure, especially quick pressure. Now, if you find yourself in a positive game script where the Niners kind of have to throw more often than they'd like, that's precisely kind of elevating that matchup where the Packers pass rushers don't have to respect the run. They can just put their, as the football guys like to say, just put their hands in the ground and go rush the passer, knowing that they don't have to stop the run. That's going to kind of highlight exactly where the Niners are weakest. And we can constantly talk about kind of a Niners team that is reliant on being ahead in this game. All that is to say, if the Packers jump out to a lead, which is very much in the cards here, they could very much win this game. And it's a completely different Niners team, right? They're 80% Niners team going into this game. Looks more like a 60 to 65% team if we kind of just assume the Niners are playing from behind. And I think that's kind of an important angle to understand. This 9.5 point spread is not like all other 9.5 point spreads. But at the same time, I think the Niners have a real strong likelihood of kind of just playing as they have all season, and as they did with the second half of last year with Brock Purdy, and they jump out to a lead and they score 40 points, and the 10 points don't really mean that much because they can win a game, 42-24, because that is how good their offense is, and the Packers have a terrible defense. But I do like to play kind of the tails here of just Jordan Love balls out, the Packers build up a lead, and kind of these teams get a lot closer together in that particular game script.
Okay. Drew, maybe pick up on some of those points Judah made in terms of the blowout potential here for the Packers. I know ultimately you're playing the 9.5, and Judah made the case the Packers have the potential to win the game, but also made the case that Packers could play very well here and lose maybe 14, 17 points.
They definitely could. There's definitely scope for that. I mean, the Packers defense is Jekyll and Hyde. Some of these results this season where they've been not at full strength, but close to full strength, and you're just what happened that day? And so if that unit shows up, Packers are probably cooked, or at least they're going to be playing from behind a lot of the game, and you're basically please somehow backdoor this, which is not a great feeling. As someone who rode through Steelers plus 10, it was miserable because you're same. Bills get the ball, they're going to score a touchdown. Oh yeah, there it goes. All right, well that's it. But yeah,
just before I forget, the Packers deciding to put their offense on the field first against the Cowboys and getting that touchdown was vital to them winning. And I guess they'd probably need to win the toss first of all, but I guess they'd go for the same strategy.
I would guess so, yeah. I would guess so, yeah. And actually, there was a third down conversion early in that particular first drive which felt monumentally important. Wait, this team scored 40 points. What are you talking about, man? Well, if they punt and Cowboys get to get the ball, an opportunity to play a little bit of a bully ball and score points on their first drive, all of a sudden it feels very different. So, and yeah, I mean that's the Packers I think are just a little bit of a fragile team that way. The Packers Cowboys game, by the way, felt literally in a lot of ways rewatching Packers Lions on Thanksgiving, right? Ooh, some early success. Ooh, this team is live. Ooh, a defensive touchdown, right? It was a very similar kind of vibe. And you got a young team that's sees that type of stuff. That you can roll that snowball downhill. But I will give Matt LaFleur credit. He put his foot on the gas. He was not willing to take 20 points and assume that was going to be enough to get it across the finish line. They continued to press the go button, all throughout that second half and really put the Cowboys on their heels, which was very impressive. By the way, something that Kyle Shanahan is not known for doing. And so, yeah, I'm if I'm holding Packers in this game and the Niners come out and they look crisp and their scripted offense is good and their defense gets a couple early stops, am I completely losing faith? No. Certainly the fact that Shanahan hasn't kind of realized that he's in imminent danger and taken his foot off the gas too early. We have lots of examples of that. So, I think there's definitely scope for a Packers backdoor, even if things aren't going great. But there is scope for the things to go great. If we want to kind of look at overall, what do you have with these two teams? I see a lot of similarities, not just sort of the way that they're structured offensively, and the way that they're rostered. But like, yeah, you have a younger team on offense for the Packers, but like still guys that can attack at various levels, like too many guys to be able to just say, well, we're going to take away that. Right. Like that's kind of the way that the Niners are built, and sort of what underpins a lot of their philosophy is like, we're just going to put talent everywhere and you're going to have to decide, and we're going to know, we're going to be one step ahead of you in terms of where to attack. And that's basically what the Packers are doing right now. And the Packers are doing it with an offensive line that's playing at a top 5 level, maybe a top 1 level. Honestly, like that offensive line is performing lights out right now. Giving Jordan Love additional time to process is making a huge difference. The Niners' strength defensively is their pass rush, period. Right. Everything else, there's question mark. Well, I guess Fred Warner is amazing, and Dre Greenlaw, when he's healthy, is amazing. But like the secondary is definitely a huge question mark. Not to mention all these guys are hurt. You have Jair Brown, Tayshaun Gibson, your starting safeties, both dealing with injuries. Ambry Thomas, I'm not sure if he will be available. He had surgery towards the end of the season, and if he is available, is at least dealing with having recent hand surgery or wrist surgery or whatever it was. So there's definitely weaknesses on this in the secondary for the Niners, which is to say, if you can hold off the Chase Young and Nick Bosa pass rush for just long enough to attack downfield, then yeah, you should be able to kind of consistently have offense in this one. The fact that Aaron Jones is performing, playing like a guy who has relatively fresh legs, that was very obvious against the Cowboys game. Like he was running like he had basically had the whole season off. He looked great. And I think that's, definitely something to keep an eye on. We are expecting Christian McCaffrey to be a full go, but he has been dealing with a lot of the wear and tear of being sort of the feature of that offense throughout the season. So who knows if he'll have as much pop. The fact that this is, those are, so the matchup angles to me all point to this is going to be a competitive game. My fair here is closer to a touchdown, so I'm happy to take the points. I agree with Judah's general points about this being big, fat tails, and you want to try to bet into a game state. Like, yeah, the Packers money line is in my accounts already. I think there's definitely a chance that they win this game, but the kind of the X factor, and this is narrative street, so bear with me, but like we're playing in a night game, we're playing in Levi's. We're not that far removed from Brock Purdy living through the nightmare of a 4-pick performance that could have been a 6-pick performance. There's ghosts if things don't go right, and if Purdy makes a couple mistakes here, there's definitely the potential for ghosts. So I think that I would still hold the Niners in a neutral setting, as the best team in the NFL, and I think there's margin. But I also have no problem going against them in a playoff setting with this many points because of Shanahan's lack of aggressiveness, particularly in an elimination setting, and because we're not that far removed from Purdy living his worst nightmare on Christmas. So it's crazy to think that you can hold those two thoughts side by side. But yes, the best team in the NFL is vulnerable. Surprise.
Yeah,
the only thing I heard from Drew there was that Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold are the same person. They're seeing ghosts. They're just the same.
Hey, look, I don't want it to happen. But like the discourse online, if Purdy stinks in this game, like just turn Twitter off. Just close the app. Like just don't go online, because it's not going to be right, and it is going to be vitriolic garbage. And if you like that sort of stuff, then by all means revel in it, I suppose. But I will not be partaking in the burying Brock Purdy if he has a bad game in the playoffs. We're in a weird spot where if he doesn't win the Super Bowl this year, like whatever stage of the playoffs he loses, like that day is going to be gross. Like just gird your loins.
I live for that. Twitter was electric on Super Wildcard weekend, and I'll be living on it for the next those 2 days, Saturday and Sunday this weekend. Drew, full agreement essentially with the Packers 9.5. Drew didn't quite go there. Thinks a better play, maybe just have a smaller bet on the money line. Bucs at Lions, though, there is disagreement here. So let's take a look at the betting that we have on matchbook.com. I thought the Bucs were immense. Monday Night Football, 3.5 underdogs, money line. The Lions, 137. The handicap sees the Bucs get a 6.5 head start at 196. The total here is 48.5, which we will cover. Drew, I'll send this back to you. seeing the line at 6.5 would, in my head, after watching this weekend football, would tempt me for the Bucs. So what make the opposite argument of why the Lions are better here, -6.5. I just thought not that they froze in that second half, but they sort of did freeze in that second half to a point on offense anyway.
Yeah, small sample size. They had three drives in like 5 plays. It felt like, so at the same time, like they needed to drive for 4 minutes and wipe out the clock. They did it. Like they won. Like the fact that it was only 24 points. Look. Just because some of us had it under and we're very, very lucky to get it home doesn't mean we need to kind of poke fun at the Lions for not getting more than 24 points.
Dude, does that make your top 5 best backdoor unders? Do you know what I mean? Like, how did that come in? Yeah.
This season, it's number one. No
Number
question.
one.
Like that was the fact that the Rams were 0 for 3 in the red zone, the fact that there was 800 yards of offense in that game, the yards per play for each team was like 7 or 8. Like that, those type of games fly over a 50, and that was
for them to kick the field goal for anyone on +2 or +2.5 is insane to me. It was so funny.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. No, that like if you have the money line, you're screaming. If you have if you have +3, you're screaming. It's like literally every Rams backer felt a little differently in that moment, which is wild. But yeah, no, that the Lions come through against a very, 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 very live Rams team. Like and like I don't mean to denigrate Baker Mayfield, but like do not hold Baker Mayfield and Matt Stafford side by side in terms of what they can accomplish in today's football. Like it is not the same. Baker Mayfield did look great on Monday Night Football against a team that was playing JV defense, freshman defense, playing defense ? Like it was a very, very soft performance by Philly. And honestly, it was a bad performance by the skill position group for the Buccaneers. What, the 8 drops, 9 drops? I stopped counting after 7. I assume they got, there was more. But ultimately, if you're going to have that kind of lackadaisical performance from your skill position players at home, honestly, there were cracks in the pass protection, I thought, from that offensive line and some big third down moments. Now you got to go on the road. You got to face a much more well-coached defense. You got to face a defense that is playing with a little bit of confidence coming off that win against the Rams. A defense that's good in the red zone, you're. I think in general you're going to be able to keep the Bucs in a box a bit here, and at least there's plenty of scope to put the Bucs in a negative game state where this is all of a sudden now Baker's just got to chuck it on every drop back. In which case I think turning him over a couple of times seems likely. The key for me in this handicap really though is the Lions offense against the Bucs defense. The Bucs defense, and I think we covered this pretty clearly last week, was and honestly, like, it's good to get a win in the playoffs. It's good to get a win every time you make a bet in football, right? I'm mad at myself for not having a bigger stake on Tampa. Like, it was very, very clearly there.
And it was so clear early on in that game as well, wasn't it, Drew?
So clearly
after 5 minutes, you knew.
The key talk, like, this never happens, but the key talking points of the week of everyone in talking head in the football environment was like, man, Jalen Hurts really cannot handle, they really are struggling against the blitz. Well, what does Todd Bowles do? Well, he brings the blitz at just an absurd rate. Like next to Brian Flores, like he's like number 2, right? And so it's like, okay, well, this could be a problem for Jalen Hurts. And sure enough, it was a problem. Like they had no answer. And now you're bringing that same sort of defensive philosophy into a game against Goff, where number 1, you're on the road, so it's going to be less effective in general, right? Number 2, you're up against an elite offensive line, particularly in pass protection. And then number 3, you're up against a guy in Goff who has done very well against the blitz this season and done well against the blitz recently. Like he faced an absurd blitz rate against the Vikings twice at the end of this season and was perfectly fine. They have the skill position group that can take advantage of some of the weaknesses, because the trade-off of when you're that aggressive in terms of bringing pressure with your defense, as Todd Bowles is that you're relying on your secondary to cover one-on-one. They couldn't do it against Devontae Smith as wide receiver 1. Hurt Devontae Smith as wide receiver 1. Right now, you're going to do it against a 3-headed monster at wide receiver plus Sam Laporta. Like I just don't see any realistic way that this secondary holds up against this passing attack if that's their approach and scheme. And everything Todd Bowles has told us throughout his entire career as a defensive coordinator and now a head coach is he's got one pitch. He just throws the fastball. Like, that's it. And so I think the Lions are going to be ready for it. In the 4 games where the Lions, faced blitz rates in the ballpark of what Tampa Bay brought, they won all 4 games. They scored 30 plus points in 3 of those games. The one they didn't score 30 against was the other game against Tampa, where they scored 20. They didn't have to score more, and they were pretty injured and just in general in terms of skill group. I think they didn't have either running back available for that one. So, ultimately, this is, I think, a perfect opportunity for the Lions to come in and flex, for the Bucs to say, well, hey, we got further than anyone believed in us. Congratulations. Great season right off into the sunset. And I may be a little kind of talking myself into getting an opportunity to bet something next week, because like believe me, nothing, we just kind of dumped all over the Niners a bit. At least I did, I guess. If the Niners win and the Lions, but then if the Niners win and it's like kind of a struggle bus, and the Lions come in just absolutely dump truck the Bucs, which I think is possible, I will be pretty delighted to see how that market opens up for the NFC Championship game, because exactly what I don't love about the way that the Bucs are playing offense right now against this current iteration of the Lions defense, I think the Niners would have an absolute field day against that unit. So Lions, I think, win comfortably. And if they head to San Francisco, best of luck to them.
Could be Lions Packers in the NFC, which
if it's Lions Packers in the NFC, I have no idea what I'll be saying next week.
That would be
honestly, I've spent the least amount of time thinking about that matchup, and guess the Packers are alive, but I don't know. I mean, another Packers win and the market's going to lose their they're going to lose it. So see.
Judah, I was, I'm not gonna lie, Drew made some good points on the blitz, because that's all I was picturing with Tampa. But like, the Lions will be ready for it. Interesting points in coming up against the Vikings as well a few weeks ago. Why is ultimately leaning Tampa Bay 6.5, or at least you're leaning there, the right side there, and we'll bring Sam in as a neutral then at the end to decide who's right.
First thing I'd say is it's actually very interesting. If you look at kind of the market on Monday, and books were kind of offering a bunch of look-ahead lines, this was actually a 6-point game. So the market has not upgraded Tampa Bay relative to their performance. I think that's just kind of like, I've heard plenty already of like, you're buying Tampa Bay at top of the market. No, you're not. Like, they haven't upgraded Tampa Bay. That's just like simply not true. If anything, they downgraded them or upgraded the Lions relative to them. That's the first thing to say. But really what I think this comes down to is sometimes there are certain kind of stats or metrics that really just, I think, capture a lot of what this game is about, and understanding kind of where teams are going, where they've been, etc. And for the Bucs, what that is a team that was running at an egregiously high rate on early downs for most of the season. They basically were just setting up 3rd and longs for Baker Mayfield constantly. Over the past 4 to 5 weeks, if you look at kind of their pass rates, they have skyrocketed to actually becoming a pretty pass-heavy team. And shockingly, this is a pass offense that has gotten way better since then. It kind of leaves the market certainly in like nowheresville when you're looking at kind of how do you price this team? Where are the Bucs? You take a kind of, okay, this team's been better for the last 4 to 5 weeks, but how do we kind of see that relative to the bigger sample size of the full season? And the point I would make is that actually the pass rate leads to much more signal of the past 4 to 5 weeks, because that is the offense they were going to run. And that is a much more effective unit. It's just not the same team. It is a simply different offensive game plan, and it works to the strengths of Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, especially how good and how often they've utilized play action. Drew, I think, makes fair points about the Eagles defense and their JV and this. I mean, the Lions aren't much better. Maybe they'll be able to tackle, but this is a dreadful secondary that, as you said, I mean, like, they were carved up by Matthew Stafford last week, even though they didn't allow too many points. I mean, if the Rams were semi-effective in the red zone, they would have scored 38 points or whatever. So I don't think the Lions are that much better, and we might have a game script here of just like total shootout. May the best quarterback win, and I'm not so sold that it is, a 70-30 battle there for Jared Goff. I'd also add that a huge kind of part of handicapping this game is that the Lions offense certainly relies on their ability to run the football and do so effectively. That is where Tampa is best. They are a major, major pass funnel. And again, I think if you want to talk about the Lions offense being semi less effective, if the Bucs can kind of stop the ground game and eliminate a lot of the threat of the Lions run, it changes the entire landscape. And the Bucs have gotten a lot healthier on defense, especially in their pass rushing units. They were certainly pressuring Jalen Hurts a ton last week. I also would not be totally surprised if Todd Bowles does the same thing he did in that Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes, where he doesn't blitz at all, even though that's a kind of function of his game plan. I don't want to cook my bets. I have no idea what he's going to do there. But I think what this really comes down to is the Bucs are a different team than they were. I still the Lions are better, certainly on a neutral. I don't think it's 6.5 points. And in this particular game script, it would not be surprising if we're just, quarterback duel, much like last week. And sure, Matthew Stafford is a lot better, but Baker Mayfield can certainly put together another very strong performance because this is a totally different Bucs team.
Okay, yeah, Sam, you've heard both cases there. I know you've a view ultimately on the total, so maybe they're both right. But where would you lean first on the match odds there with Drew and Judah? Because I came into a Tampa plus 6.5 my head. Drew made some good points. Judah's pointed out maybe Todd just not blitzing at all would just mess everything up. Really, I think. I don't know what the outcome of the game will be if that's the case.
Yeah, I think. Thanks, guys. You've scrambled my head considerably more. I had a kind of lean on Detroit coming into the show today. Drew then nailed it down. I was thinking I should put this in my bet of the game. I should have put this in my bet of the game. I'm sold. And then Judah's now brought it back, and I'm kind of glad it was only a lean because I really like. Everything should tell you that the Lions will win this comfortably because they are just on an offensive powerhouse. But there is something that is putting me off. But ultimately, yeah, let's kind of talk about the total, and that will come up in this as well, I think. But the reason I'm taking the over on 48.5, like, just frankly, is just how bad these two defenses are, particularly against the pass. But yeah, in terms of passing yards, Bucs were the 4th worst in the regular season, the Lions 6th worst. They are both absolute pass funnels. And sort of to take Judah's point, we have seen that Bucs offense change in the past sort of month or so, month and a half, which I think is really indicative of something. And if you look at their last few games, obviously 307 yards against the Eagles through the air. Admittedly, before that, a real stinker against the Panthers. But preceding that, 292 against the Saints, 265 against the Jags, 353 against the Packers. It is a team that are really kind of looking to actually use Baker Mayfield's arm rather than shielding the team from Baker Mayfield's arm as they were earlier in the season, which coming into this matchup, I think is definitely a good thing considering how good the Lions defense is against the run. Second fewest yards in the regular season allowed to the run, behind the Bears, I think. So that's kind of one thing that makes me think this could just be a shootout. It's a shootout that I think the Lions will ultimately win. But at the same time, there's plenty of opportunity for lots of passing. I think both teams terrible against tight ends. And we saw Sam Laporta and Cade Otton both being very important to their team's offenses this past weekend. So I think we're going to see a lot of those two guys. But ultimately, the Lions are probably that little bit more explosive on offense, and they generally have been performing well at home. We've seen the bulk of Jared Goff's touchdowns being on his home field. So I kind of think that little advantage is going to put them over the edge here. But I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think we're going to see the Lions. I'm very confident we're going to see 30 plus points for the Lions, and I think we're going to see certainly within the 20s for the Bucs too.
Okay, over 48.5, maybe the way to play that if you're unsure which side. Judah leans Tampa Bay plus 6.5. I will reiterate that. Drew's on Lions minus 6.5. Chiefs at Bills. Who decides the running order here? I always like race card order, but then we've hardly any time to talk about the biggest game. So, and I'm still rambling on here. Very quickly, Chiefs 232, Bills 172. We all know the lines at this point. 2.5 is the line. The total is 45.5. Judah, take it away on your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I think that kind of my evolution of the Bills this season is quite remarkable. Low on them to start the season, getting higher, fire Joe Brady, really sell off. Wait, the defense is actually really good. All of a sudden, kind of buying them because of their defense. relative to the rest of the AFC. Their entire defense gets hurt. Defense kind of projects all of a sudden as a middling unit, and it has me back on the Chiefs here. I think that the Bills' offense is extremely overrated. I've been talking about this for a while. They're running the ball too much, and when they are passing, especially, I think because of the circumstances in which they're passing, fewer first downs, more kind of second and third have to have it situations. The passing effectiveness has been neutralized. This is also the Gabe Davis injury. I think matters a lot. I mean, I love Khalil Shakir. That's great. Trent Sherfield as your third wide receiver is a problem. He doesn't get targeted. Josh Allen's not comfortable going there. That matters a lot against the Chiefs secondary, which has been great. L'Jarius Sneed has done a terrific job kind of locking down wide receivers all season. Stephon Diggs is not the same player he was. I don't think he's kind of matchup agnostic in that same way. And I mean, I definitely had some signs of life from the Chiefs last week, who have certainly been on the wrong side of so much variance this year, whether it's turnovers, whether it's drops, it's all of the above. At the end of the day, this is a Bills defense which is hurting, overpriced by market. I think Bills offense is overpriced by market. I have full faith in, I shouldn't say full faith. I have some confidence that the Chiefs can find a little more of what they had last week, letting Patrick Mahomes do his thing. They finally let Rashee Rice actually operate as the wide receiver one, and hey, the guy's going for 100 yards every week. Magical. I think this is a Chiefs team that matches up really well, and I think they are the better team right now on a neutral, even though they're not priced as such.
Okay, Sam, you lean Chiefs as well. It's hard to get away from their defense against the Dolphins. Look, Dolphins did a lot of things wrong in the game, but you'd have to be impressed with the Chiefs. They didn't really turn a lot of their drives into touchdowns. They're going to have to do that here if they're going to beat the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you say that, but the kind of one thing that really struck me from that game against the Steelers was the game was done, and then the Bills effectively opened the door to let the Steelers have a chance. And if that was anybody but Mason Rudolph, well, especially if that anybody is Patrick Mahomes, I think there's a real good chance that something could have happened there. And I think they can't really risk that again. The Steelers defense ranked 6th in defensive DVOA with the Chiefs 7th. I think the Chiefs are probably a better unit, and certainly without TJ Watt are definitely a better unit. So I think they're going to put up more of a fight than the Steelers did. And I don't trust the Bills whatsoever. And with the Chiefs, my kind of major concern is the kind of main thing coming out of this win against the Dolphins has been talks of about a turning point. And now it's sort of the business end of the season. We're going to see the real Chiefs. But I do worry, how much are we reading into a result that was heavily affected by weather conditions and by a Dolphins team that were decimated, particularly in defense? So that concerns me a lot. Are we reading too much into that? But ultimately, I think realistically, I've got to take this as I'm leaning Chiefs plus 2.5. I think it's going to be more of a defensive battle than an offensive one. And if it comes to that, I back the Chiefs to be the team that come out on top.
Okay, yeah, Drew, talking about how did Steelers not sneak a back door in the end against the Bills? But look, 14 points during that game for the Bills at a crucial time came on turnovers. In terms of a bet here, looking at the Chiefs and how they played against the Dolphins, I know you have a lot of question marks about what the Bills are doing this year. Is it hard then for that not to cloud your judgment, I guess, if you're making a bet, or how do you sort of leave that aside, look at the two teams, Bills at home, and then ultimately decide Chiefs money line here?
Yeah, I think you throw out the Bills Steelers result in terms, and then honestly the Chiefs Dolphins result. I think you can throw those both out in terms of handicapping this game. There's so much familiarity between these two teams. Yeah. We've played each other so many times now in the last 5 years with kind of similar rosters, philosophies, same two coaches. So they're the same two quarterbacks. There's a lot of familiarity here. I think that leans to an under. Although I think the Kansas City money line is a better bet at price because of the injuries to the Bills defense. Judah's characterization of watching the Bills and pricing the Bills this week, because the Bills were in a good game that had to be handicapped every week this year. And the way that I was like seeing it and what the market was treating the offensive defense was like, it was always like we're in completely different spots. And where I landed with the Bills heading into the playoffs was, this is a team built on their defense. Like, it's a team that was built on defense that was, kind of coached up throughout the balance of the season to where they lose Milano. Their second level was a joke and everyone was taking advantage of it. And they coached up Bernard and Dodson. And those guys really fortified that part of their defense to the tune of now the pass rush was more effective. The secondary was playing better. Like, it just kind of helped sort of take away the weak link in a weak link system. And now those guys are out. And now they're going up against a team that is perfectly fine. Oh, you want us to give it to Isaiah Pacheco 30? Okay, fine. All right, we'll just run it at you. And then, this is a big high leverage down. Mahomes needs 10 yards. He's going to break the pocket and scramble. Oh, he got to 25. Yeah. Oh, okay. There's definitely a frustration when it comes to defending a team like the Chiefs when you have, issues at the linebacker level, which the Bills apparently will have heading into this game. It's lost to history how lucky Brady got in his runs, right? Like, people know that the Patriots and Brady won their division every year. They had a bye every year. This is back when there were 2 byes, for the top 2 seeds. So they kind of were afforded this extra week to get right. And then they played some teams that were beat up. Like Mahomes, he's running like a god here. Like, he gets to play the Dolphins last week where their defense is entirely decimated. He draws the Bills this week where their defense is entirely decimated. This offense for the Chiefs is not good at all, but I think we're realistically looking at them hosting a 4th or 6th consecutive AFC championship game if the Texans could do something special on Saturday. So absolutely wild that we're here. And I don't think you can doubt Mahomes in any way, shape, or form, even with this lousy cast of characters he's throwing the ball to. Ultimately, the other side of the handicap, which is Bills defense against Chiefs offense, is strength versus strength. I don't see really any obvious ways that the Bills, in terms of how they want to attack right now, are going to have consistent success in this game. They were very good on the ground in the first half in December when they played, and then weirdly went away from that. Maybe they kind of stick to that game plan more, and this is like a real physical rushing attack versus rushing attack, old school 80s type of a feel to it. I don't know, but ultimately, Josh Allen's going to have to come up with some kind of level that we haven't seen from him in a while, I think, in order to, go score for score with Mahomes in this one, considering the state of his defense. So I'm kind of all over the place on this one. There's so much has already been said about this particular handicap, not just this year, but the last handful of years. And, this probably should be closer to a pick 'em with the health and injury status of the Buffalo defense. So I'm going to take the Chiefs plus money. And I grabbed a little under 46 on the open at 45. I think we're getting pretty close. So not really loving the total at this point.
Okay, so 45.5, you'd leave it off. Would you? Do you want me to put in lean 45.5 on the?
Yeah, I would lean.
Lean.
Yeah, I'd lean under here because I can see both teams being pretty successful on the ground. At which point, maybe the game just gets naturally shortened.
Yeah. Gotcha. Right, we're going to run through our long shots. Normally we do these, and the guys make the cases because we've essentially covered them. And best bets, we're going to literally go through them here. You can see the long shot record on screen. Drew 10-6, Judah 8-9. Sam, you need to play a bit of catch up here, so I'm going to try and sell you as many of the underdogs as possible. You have 2 you want to double up. You're going to add any other underdogs to maybe give us a home run for the best long shot here?
Yeah, go on then. So I had originally gone with Packers and Texans money line. I think it'd be the first time both one seeds have been out since 2010. So need something to happen that doesn't happen often. The Texans have never made a conference title game. They've never won a road playoff game, but it changes. We have the Packers and Texans. I think that's about 18-1. But I think, if you're in for a penny, go in for a pound, chuck in the Chiefs, chuck in the Bucs. Why not? Just go for broke.
Let's go.
I genuinely do think a small stake on certainly the Packers and Texans money line double is well worth the 18-1 for sure.
Yeah, look, and even playing the underdogs fourfold, really fun bet to have on the matchup betting exchange. You can do multiples on the matchup betting exchange. Do check that out. In one line, Judah, who's your money line pick this week in the long shots?
Yeah, going with the Packers. I think if Jordan Love is certainly on the ascent, and if the Packers jump out to a lead, this is not a Niners team that is 80% better than the or an 80% money line team versus the Packers here.
Yeah, and Drew, your Texans money line.
Yeah, my fair win probability for the Texans is 35%. So that's the biggest edge for me among the dogs for money line.
Okay, and best bet, sticking with you, Drew. If you had to have one bet on the card, it is the Lions, even though there was a lot of debate in that game. That is your best bet, is it?
Best bet Lions. I like all the dogs this week, except for the Bucs, and it is literally just kind of maybe a single handicap, which is the Lions. Have handled the blitz exceptionally well this season, and they have the weapons to really make the Bucs secondary hurt here. So Lions are getting to 30 points, and I think they cover as long as their defense keeps the Bucs in the 20s.
Okay, and Judah, for you,
20s.
Low 20s. Judah, those Bills defense injuries are ultimately getting you there for the best bet, being Chiefs money line.
I have this game more as a 50-50 type of game, and as you say, 2 days of rest advantage, serious injuries on the Bills side of things, in addition to a Chiefs defense, which matches up very well with a Bills offense. I'm on the Chiefs here.
Okay, and Sam, it's CJ Stroud. It's Texans +9 for you, best bet. If you have one bet on the card, it's Texans +9 at the Ravens this week.
Yeah, absolutely. CJ Stroud has been superb. He was the best bet last week, and we're going to go and do it again this week, hopefully.
Yeah, best bets. We're 3-0 wildcard weekend. No pressure. We've only got 3 more games to preview on the Matchup Betting Exchange podcast, which is really depressing, to be honest with you. But my thanks to Drew, Sam, and Judah. We are truly blessed to steal one of Judah's lines. So really sit back and enjoy playoff football this weekend, because as I said, there'll only be 3 games left. We'll be back same time, same place. If having a bet on the Matchup Betting Exchange, enjoy it, have fun, make sure it adds to the enjoyment, but doesn't take over. So please gamble responsibly. We will see you same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.